beautiful sky.
Hey everyone, Mr. DVB here. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing what was one of my most anticipated movies of the year, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I've been excited for this movie since day one of its announcement. I absolutely love this group of characters and these movies. James Gunn took a group of relatively lesser known characters, especially to the general audience, and turned them into some of the most memorable, likable, lovable ones in the MCU. They're hilarious, but they're also super emotionally engaging. And this film in particular, I think, is probably the most emotional I have been during an MCU film. It's quite a sad film, but it's also like it's a range of emotions. It's happy sadness, it's genuine sadness, it's all these types of different things. But I'm just so happy that we actually have a conclusive end for these group of characters, because so often for me an issue with a lot of franchises, they just go on, and eventually it gets to the point where they've passed their prime and they kind of come to like a lukewarm end. Like that happened to me with Star Wars and a couple of other franchises. It's when they end, like, you know, at their peak, like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or whatever. That's when it's just most effective, and I'm glad that Guardians has that, because this movie was totally that for me. It was that emotionally satisfying end where I can watch these three films and go, man, like, what a good ending, right? Like, it actually has a conclusive feel, and I'm just very happy about that. It's not often that we get that. Right? There's other MCU franchises or characters and whatever that I feel like have that issue I just talked about, whereas this genuine conclusion here. I would probably argue that, honestly, for me, when it comes to comic book trilogies, this is the one I'm closest to. My favorite is the Dark Knight trilogy and always will be, but I didn't see, you know, Batman Begins or Dark Knight during their initial theatrical run, right? I saw each of these Guardians movies, like, opening night, so I had that excitement for all of them, and then just that love of this group of characters. So it does feel like, you know, something I really care about coming to a great ending, and that's awesome to have. So yeah, with that being said, all the characters in this movie I thought were excellent. Star-Lord in particular, Chris Pratt, I think gives the best performance I've seen of his career. Really like what they do with his character in this movie. Everybody in this film plays kind of a more lost, broken version of themselves. This isn't like, you know, kicking off like the other Guardians films where there's a really fun, energetic song and it's a really cool, actiony opening scene. This has a much more somber, bleak opening, and that just kind of immediately sets up like what this film is going to be like. Not to say that this film doesn't have humor. It's still Guardians at its core with that humor that we all know and love, and there's plenty of funny moments. But, you know, at its core, the movie is definitely much more emotionally engaging than normal for the MCU. So I really liked that. But yeah, Star-Lord, you know, he's kind of a drunk in this movie, at least just for, like, the opening scene. He's kind of reeling from, like, the loss of Gamora and how she's a different person now. So we're seeing how that affects him. Rocket, you know, we're seeing a lot of his backstory, and we're finally understanding why he's the way he is. Drax, or like Nebula, and, you know, they've all got their issues in this movie, and I just liked all of that. Mantis does kind of feel like she's just constantly bullied by the group, so it's just all that group banter is still there, but it just feels even more personal here, and I really like that. It felt like, you know, at this point they fully realize who these characters are, and they know how to write them and give them genuine conflicts, because that's what I think makes, you know, comic book characters most interesting, is when the conflicts they're dealing with aren't, you know, necessarily saving the galaxy or saving the world from bad guy, whatever. It's more so, you know, personal things that we can actually connect to, right? Like I can feel bad for Peter in this and understand why he's the way he is. I can feel bad for Mantis and understand why she feels the way she does in this movie. So it's when you can connect them on a more of a natural, like, human level that it becomes all the more interesting, as opposed to just, oh, they have to save the galaxy from this guy who wants to blow up this planet or whatever, right? So this movie gave me that. I will say, out of the three Guardians films, I think the story for this one's probably the messiest. At its core, like I said, it's very focused just on these characters and then saving themselves, not saving the galaxy, but saving themselves, and realizing who they are and everything. But the actual, just, you know, like, beat by beat part of it is probably the weakest. It's very MacGuffin-y feeling, where the characters have to go from, like, point A to point B to grab this thing, and that means that now we have to go find this guy to get this device. There's a lot of that going on in this movie. It really didn't bother me, though, because, like I said, it is at its core about these characters, and I was so engaged in what was going on with them. But it's interesting because, in a way, I would say that this actually feels like the smallest scale out of the three Guardians films. Because the first one, it's like, you know, you're dealing with Ronan, and he's going to destroy an entire planet, and it's an Infinity Stone. Guardians 2, there's, like, every single planet has, like, that ego's thing on it, and they're all going to be taken over by him. This one, it feels smaller scale, but like I said, it feels like it's dialing more on the characters, and I like that. That's an interesting way to go. I also want to mention real quick, I really liked Gamora in this movie. I was quite iffy on the concept of bringing her back post Infinity War because I thought her death was very effective and emotional and everything. So when they brought her back, I was kind of annoyed by that. But they go in a direction with our character that I didn't expect here. I really liked it because we're seeing, like, who would Gamora be if she was free, right? Like, if she never had to deal with any of, like, the Thanos or Guardians of the Galaxy stuff. Like, what kind of person would she be? So we see who she would have been if she was free early on in her life. And it's a very interesting direction. She's much more aggressive and angry in this film, and some people might not like that about her character, but I just really liked what they did with her character here. I thought it was quite different and honestly a little bit bold almost, because it kind of just it breaks free of what I would have normally expected. And that's what I can just say about this movie overall is that it's great with its characters and everything. I was emotionally invested and whatnot, but at the end of the day, it feels different from the other MCU films we've gotten as of late. Phase 4, for me, honestly, definitely, it's the MCU fatigue is definitely there. It's starting to feel like the franchise is kind of declining. I feel like they're setting up the next big thing, but they're kind of rushing into setting it up, right? We had 3 movies all about the multiverse, and they were all dealing with the multiverse in different ways. None of them were connected. None of them actually had anything to do with Kang until Ant-Man. So it just kind of feels like Marvel's just kind of rushing to the next big thing right now. And Guardians, it's completely separate. I was excited for this movie not because, oh, I can't wait to see like what they're gonna do with the Avengers next. Like, I can't wait to see them set up Kang and the multiverse more in this movie. Like, it has nothing to do with that. This film is just purely about these characters and ending their story. And so that's great to have, right? Like, like I said, this movie, it feels like it's James Gunn's movie. It doesn't feel like it's corporate Disney's film, whereas a lot of the other MCU films do feel like that right now. And even from a visual standpoint, this movie is miles above recent MCU films. I mean, you look at Ant-Man's CGI, and then you look at the CGI in this film. It is mind-boggling how 2 films that are in the same franchise could have that different of CGI. The effects in this movie are incredible. This is the nicest looking MCU film, I would say, especially from like a CGI standpoint. Gunn just knows what he's doing. I thought the same thing with Guardians 2. I thought the visuals there were gorgeous, and they're amazing here. I mean, there's definitely like some practical effects being used here for certain creature designs, which I liked, but everything just looks great, and the colors and everything. This isn't like a washed out gray looking MCU film. It has good colors. The 3D was actually effective for once as well. I saw this in 3D, and it actually was good for once, which is nice because that's kind of uncommon these days. But yeah, like across the board, I'm just very happy with this movie. As for my rating, I mean, I don't want to jump the gun and give it a 10 right now. I'm going to give it a 9 just because I do need to see it again to fully like see if it is a 10 for me. Emotionally and just satisfaction-wise, it is a 10, right? Like, this is the Return of the Jedi for me of the Guardians films. I mean, it's obviously the third entry, but, emotionally satisfying third conclusion and everything, and whatnot. Like, it checks off all those boxes, like I said. The villain was really good. I kind of forgot to talk about. I still have things to say. High Evolutionary, really good villain. He doesn't actually have as much screen presence or screen time or whatever you want to call it with the Guardians as I would have expected. A lot of his stuff is in flashbacks, and then he has a couple of scenes where he's interacting with the Guardians. And from like a physical threat level, we don't actually really see him take on the Guardians a whole lot. But he just has a really good performance. He's well written. His performance is good. He was intimidating, I thought. So I liked him. Adam Warlock was kind of one of the movie's weaker parts, but it wasn't a thing that dragged down the movie for me. Some people are using it as like a film, as like one of the film's big negatives. I don't agree. Like, Warlock is a bit childish in this movie, and he kind of just shows up randomly. But again, like, this is about ending the Guardians of the Galaxy, like the group that we know, right? So we're gonna see more of Adam Warlock in the future, and understand his character more and everything. I'm sure he'll become a more likable, in-depth character. But this was kind of just the film, introducing him, and I'm totally fine with that. Last thing I want to mention, soundtrack's great, and the action sequences. The action is phenomenal in this movie. Best action in the MCU, I would say. There's this one scene in particular, this hallway fight. We see a little bit of it in the trailer. It was incredible. It's all done to look like one continuous shot. It goes on for a few minutes, and the kills and everything in that scene are just like insane. It's such a cool scene. So I really loved the movie from a technical perspective. I think it's very effective, and definitely a must-watch movie in my opinion. So here you go, guys. Those are my thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. There's probably some things I forgot to mention that I wanted to say, but go see this movie. It's great. I loved it. I'm so happy that it turned out the way it did. And, yeah, potentially favorite MCU film. We'll have to see. It's very hard for me to rank the Guardians movies because they're all very different from one another, which is another thing I have to give James Gunn credit for, is that even while, the motivation for the villain in 3 might be quite similar to the motivation for the villain in 2, all of these movies still feel wildly different. They feel tonally different. They feel, like, from a character standpoint, like they're trying to tell different stories and, grow these characters more. So, definitely best MCU trilogy, not even a damn question. Anyways, thank you all for watching this video. See you guys next time. I think the next movie I'll be reviewing is probably Fast and Furious 10. I have zero hype for that movie, but I'm still going to go see it. And yeah, I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.